So about a year ago, I made the decision to move to Seattle, and when I told people, this is pretty much how it went. Oh hey, have you figured out what you're doing next year? Yeah, I'm going to be moving to Seattle. Ha ha ha, too bad you couldn't get a job in California. Well, actually, I had the option and I chose to move to Seattle. Oh, please. Nobody would choose to move to Seattle. Have you seen the weather? Well, it's a little gray in the winter, but I heard that the summer can be really nice. A little gray? It's sunny like 3 days a year, man. Also, have you not heard of the Seattle freeze? Well, yeah, but I heard that it can... You'll never make any friends. Everybody hates everybody, which means everybody will hate you. Yep, that's definitely how I remember it. Anyways, this is how the story goes. About halfway through my senior year, the last year in college, because we don't use those terms in Canada, I'd finished interviewing and I was fortunate enough to decide between 2 jobs, and they were very, very similar. Same pay, same benefits, exact same job description. The one difference, one was in the Bay Area, one was in Seattle. Now, I had done an internship in the Bay Area, so I knew what that was all about. I've never actually lived in Seattle, but I have done an internship in Vancouver, which is like Canada's Seattle twin, so I pretty much knew what it was all about. I spent some time thinking it over, and I ended up going with Seattle. Don't get me wrong, I definitely didn't pick Seattle because of the weather. But I did have some interesting reasons for choosing Seattle, so I thought I'd share them with you, and share with you how they panned out now that I've spent a year here, and I've spent the entire miserable winter here. Keep in mind that I have nothing against the Bay Area. In fact, I still visit there many times a year, and I have a bunch of friends that live there. I simply don't like the narrative that we have in tech, where it's sort of like Bay Area or bust. In other words, if you're not working in Silicon Valley, you're a useless engineer or something like that. I really don't like that narrative. I think that narrative can be harmful because I think it sets unreasonable expectations for upcoming engineers. And it can make others worry that they're sacrificing their career by not living in the Bay Area, which I don't think is necessarily true. With that being said though, let's talk about why I chose to live in Seattle and why it might be the right choice for you. It's a little funny how I chose that transition because the first reason I had is actually really specific to me and doesn't really apply to you at all. For me, I had way more friends living in Seattle than in the Bay Area at the time. And so I knew that if this whole Seattle freeze thing impacted me, at least I had a couple of friends that I could cling on to. Speaking of the Seattle freeze, I actually haven't really noticed a shift in attitude in Seattle compared to other cities. I think there's like a general environment in tech where we're pretty polite people, but sometimes it takes a while to build a close friendship with us. You know what? That's what I really like about people in our industry though, because it might take a little longer to build friends, but you build much more meaningful relationships with very genuine people. Now, this article on the Seattle freeze is my personal favorite. It's by Thrillist, and they basically go on to bash Seattle and talk about how making friends is impossible, but this line, oh, it's gold. Listen to this. Only the hardy survive, and the ones who put their roots are rightfully wary of those who haven't put in their time yet. There isn't a lot of room. We're fighting for limited resources. Keep those bastards out. Give them the freeze. If you make it through, maybe you, too, deserve to stay. That really makes me feel like I moved to prison. And while I understand that some people might actually feel this way, that's really not the experience that I've had. It's also not the experience that most of my friends have had, and if you go on the Seattle subreddit, it's not the experience that most of the people have had there either. I've heard someone explain it as, when you line up at the grocery store in Seattle, people don't just randomly talk to each other. Right, that's true. That's also true in pretty much every big city in North America. Think about it. The second main reason for me is that I think the nature options in Seattle are just completely unfair. And I know some people are gonna say the Bay Area has Yosemite, Tahoe, beautiful beaches, beautiful bikeable terrain, and you know what? You're 100% right. But in my biased and otherwise completely not credible opinion, the two just don't compare to each other. Here in Seattle, you can drive 45 minutes and you can be hiking, camping, skiing, my personal favorite. It's so close. And while we're on the topic of skiing, let me tell you what actually happened when I moved here. So I moved here pretty much buy the Epic Ski Pass right away. For those of you who don't know what that is, you basically just are able to ski in a bunch of different resorts all over North America for unlimited amounts of days. One of the resorts you're allowed to ski on is Stevens Pass, which is literally right beside Seattle. Exciting, right? This is what ends up happening. I drive up to Whistler 5 times in Canada, go to Tahoe to ski twice with my friend, go all the way to Denver to ski, and guess how many times I skied in Washington State? So clearly, being super close to the mountains is very important to me. But I'm gonna blame some of that on the pandemic because it kind of cut the ski season short, and also, in all honesty, I really do plan on taking advantage of it next year. So if you ask me, if you're someone who absolutely loves the mountains, this might be the only selling point you really need for Seattle. Alright, here's the third reason. It's all about the money, money, money. Wait a sec, that's not how this song goes. I did put this third on my list because as important as money is, the two things that I already mentioned are actually way more important to me. Don't get me wrong though, I don't hate money. As I mentioned before, the two positions I was offered, the pay was extremely similar. The cost of living, however, is extremely not. Now, Seattle's not a cheap city by any standard. The average one-bedroom apartment can cost you $2,100 a month. That's crazy, right? Not compared to the $3,500 a month that it could cost you in San Francisco. That's a $1,400 a month difference, which is $17,000 per year. Now slap on that lovely state income tax, and if you're making a software engineering salary of say $100,000, that adds up to $25,000 a year. That's $25,000 cash after taxes, a quarter of your salary. That's a brand new car every single year. That is not nothing. So those are the main reasons why I chose Seattle. But there are some other reasons, some which I didn't even discover until I moved here, which you may want to consider if you're making a similar decision. You didn't think I would actually cover this topic without mentioning weather, did you? The weather in the Bay Area is objectively better, and if we're talking strictly about South Bay, there's no point even having a discussion. However, if we're talking strictly between San Francisco and Seattle, there's still no point in having a discussion. I didn't put as much weight on this as most people do. Part of the reason is because I come from East Coast Canada, so both of these places were such a huge upgrade in terms of weather that it really didn't make that much of a difference for me. The other thing that I think is important to mention is that the rain in Seattle is often overstated. Did you know that it actually rains more in New York City than it does in Seattle? Yeah, I didn't either. Additionally, I even think the summers in Seattle are really hard to beat. It's like a perfect 75 degrees for 16 hours a day and completely sunny for the entire summer. While the rain in Seattle is overstated, the gray skies definitely are not. If you're someone that gray and cloudy has a large effect on you, you probably shouldn't move here. Another thing I needed to consider is that my job was far enough from San Francisco that I basically didn't consider commuting between San Francisco and my job an option. So for me, since I'm a total city boy, Seattle had a huge advantage in that I could live directly downtown and commute to my job. If you want to compare the actual cities though, Seattle and San Francisco, they're completely different. San Francisco has character. It has charm. It has this feeling of things have happened here, you know? Seattle, on the other hand, while feeling much cleaner for sure, has this feeling of we are racing to build buildings because these people are moving in and we don't know what to do. Kind of like the whole city was put together over the course of a weekend. The final point that I wanted to make is that my experience on the job at Seattle is actually quite different from expected. Now keep in mind, this is definitely based on personal experience and it'll vary largely from person to person, company to company, team to team. However, my experience is that Seattle tends to draw in a crowd of people who are trying to raise a family, people maybe who wanted to escape the craziness of the Bay Area. I guess statistically, these people are often more senior developers. This means that compared to my jobs at other places, Seattle has a disproportionate number of senior engineers on every team. At least that's my experience, which means that for a junior engineer, it means a crazy amount of learning opportunities from some really smart senior engineers. So maybe that allows for more opportunities to grow, like a tree. That is about all I have to say on this Seattle versus Bay Area topic. If you lived in either or both of these places, please leave a comment. I'd like to know your opinion on the difference. If you did enjoy this video or find it useful, consider liking. Do it. Also consider subscribing if you want to see similar videos to this. Other than that, see you next time.